Hey guys, so I've talked about this before, but I only told the first part of the story because there's actually a full second part that I wanted to talk about today. Now, why is this video called an apology, so to speak? Because I have been thinking about this for a while, and I've been putting some new perspective on this to that's why I make this video. Anyways, for those of you who haven't seen that first video, basically, when I was this first grade or second? When I was in first grade in Chicago, there's this kid named Yi Jung, and he came to our school in the middle of the semester, and he was just a weird kid. And for those of you who've ever messed with someone, I'm not saying you should mess with people, okay? That's something that's childish, but for those of us like me, when we were younger, we've messed with people, just how we sort of the boy little hormones or whatever acted out in us. But for anyone who's ever messed with someone, you can sense weakness. You can sense prey in certain people. And in Yi Jung, you could just sense this kid was a guy we can mess with. I can't describe how. It was something about his body language and the way his eyes darted. Basically, you could tell a lot from a person's eyes and a person's body language. And he just gave off this little uncomfortableness that a lot of us didn't like and we wanted to get rid of. And what a lot of people did was they would mess with the kid, right, to get rid of the uncomfortableness. And part of me reflecting on this was just reflecting on why I also messed with this kid. Like, I never blatantly made fun of this kid or did anything like that. What I did was, sometimes he wanted to play with us, and I'd purposefully, let's say he wanted to play Game Boy or he wanted to play some game, I'd purposely explain the game mechanics wrong to him just to see him fail. Like, that was the type of, mostly that was the type of thing I would mess with him on. Of course, you guys know I'm also a person who makes big plans and I do it. So I did jump him twice. I know that's horrible. I feel so bad about it. That's partly why I wanted to make this video. But most people, he wasn't in my class, right? He was in another class in my grade. So most people just messed with him every day. But I didn't really mess with him. He always came to seek my friendship. I was probably one of the only Chinese kids in the school too. But when I would mess with him, the two big times I messed with him, I don't even remember how it started, but it just started. One day, the first time, you guys can watch that story here, I reflected on it already, but one day I was just like, hey, this kid, he always pretends he knows Kung Fu. He's always watching these Kung Fu movies. I want to test his Kung Fu. So I told my friend Tom, and my friend Tom's Korean, so me and Tom always hung out together because we were the Asian. And then Tom told Charlie. Charlie's this white guy. And then suddenly Charlie told Hassan. Hassan was an Indian dude. And then Hassan told, I believe the guy's name was Jeremy. And then Jeremy told Steve. And then suddenly it was a group of like 8 to 10 people going over to fight Yi Jung. And you guys know how the result of that was. But when I first told that story, I believe it was 2 years ago, I neglected the second part, which was, so after that incident, I went to an after-school program because my parents were busy and I couldn't be home by myself at that young an age. So I went to an after-school program, and there's a guy who's Indian also. I forgot his name, and it's a really hard name to remember. And I remember the first time I met him, I forgot his name because his name was so hard to remember. And I wasn't even good friends with this kid. But somehow Yi Jung went to the after-school program with us too. And somehow me and him just decided to mess with Yi Jung one more time. And we were in the playground. I don't even remember what happened. Where my memory fails me is I don't remember if we went over to mess with him or he wanted to play with us and we were rejecting his request to play with us. That's what I wish I remember, because those are little minute details. They could explain a lot. But anyways, I forgot how it started. But after a few minutes, we were called inside because recess for the after-school program ended. And so we were going back. He was held up for some reason, so he was coming inside a little later than I am. So I went to the room where our after-school program class was, and I started hearing rumors like these other kids were like, "Oh my God, Yi Jung has a knife. Yi Jung has a knife," and this is the type of guy I am. I didn't believe it. I'm like, no, I'm gonna see myself. And then I walk into the room and I see Yi Jung, right? And he pulls out a box cutter and he points it at me. And I'm like, oh shit. So I walk out. And then my friend, this Indian friend, forgot his name, comes back. I'm like, dude, Yi Jung has a knife, man. And he's like, what? I don't believe it too. And he's like, I'm like, no, don't go back. He's like, no, I'm going to see. So I don't want to face that knife again. And I'm afraid for my friend also. So I just kind of trail behind him as my friend goes in. And then I see my friend see Yi Jung. And Yi Jung points a knife at him. And then my friend's like, ah! And he comes running back. I'm like, yeah, we got to run, man. So we run. And then one of the supervisors, there were 2 or 3 supervisors for our after-school class. One of the supervisors sees this. She's like, what's going on? She was this big, chubby woman, like super manly. She had a lot of strength. One time, I was being really annoying. She grabbed me by my legs and started shaking me. She's like, I'm going to shake all the ants out of your pants. So there's a lot of strength in her. And that's bad for boys, too. Boys just have energy. You can't just tell them to sit down. But anyways, going back to the story. So we tell her, we're like, dude, Yi Jung has a knife, man. Oh, my God, it's so scary. And so she walks over. She's not scared, right? She's like, what can a little kid, a little first grader with a knife do? And so we walk behind her. And she's like, yo, Yi Jung, they say that you have a knife. Of course, she didn't talk like that. That's just my impression of her. And Yi Jung pulls out the knife again. And then this is the point I realized Yi Jung was bleeding from both his nose. So my friend must have hit him somehow in the face and like caused him a nosebleed. So he was bleeding from the nose. And the teacher's like, oh, okay, you can't bring this to class, man. And then she took the box cutter away from him. And then Yi Jung like put his fingers on me, and my friend's like, he, because he couldn't really speak English back then. His English was very limited. He like, he. And I'm looking at my friend, I'm like, what is he saying? And then he looks at the teacher again, points at me, and my friend's like, he. And then I guess some of the other students who were on the playground probably saw us fighting Yi Jung. So they're like, yeah, they were messing with Yi Jung. Messing, this word wasn't a word in the 90s. I don't remember what word we used in the 90s, but we definitely didn't use the word messing. So the students were like, these two were messing with Yi Jung. And so the teacher's like, oh, okay. All right, you guys get a timeout. And so my friend and I were like, oh, man. Like, we totally forgot that there was just a knife pointed at us. We're like, oh, man, we're going to get timeout. Oh, it sucks. Never thought about the fact that, oh, my God, dude, this guy could have, like, tried to hit us or stab us or slash at us with a knife. So we're sitting there in timeout, and I tell my friend actually, he's smart. He grabs a book to read, so he's not really in timeout. And I told him, I'm like, just pretend you're sad. Pretend you feel bad about this, so, like, we get off timeout quicker. And then he listens to me, and then he's reading his book. He has his head all down, and I have my head all down. I pretend I'm really sad. And, of course, instead of a 20-minute timeout, it was like 15 minutes because she saw that we were both sad, and then she let us out early. But this kind of glanced past my mind for many years. And then I believe when I thought about the story again 2 months ago, I just remember Yi Jung and his nose bleeding. And I remember thinking back to that day, and that image of his nosebleed, it was the first time I realized we were doing damage to him. Right before, you fight him, whatever, you mess with him, and then he seems all normal the next day. But then, man, when he had blood coming out of his nose after that playground incident, I suddenly realized, oh, wow, this is not funny for him. It was the first time I realized, wow, this is not funny for him. And maybe that's how morality, maybe that's how this sort of reflexive type of thing, empathy, you could say, in a human starts. You see blood, you've seen blood before, you're like, wow, that person, there's blood on that person too, whoa, and I kind of caused it. And the epilogue to this story was I never messed with Yi Jung again after this. I think something about seeing blood in his nose made me realize, okay, he's just like me. I need to stop messing with him. And the epilogue was I actually became good friends with him. We weren't best friends, but I definitely became like his only friend. I definitely hung out with him, and I spoke Chinese with, even though his English got good, little kids, they learn the language so quickly, especially him. I mean, he's getting bullied all the time. He's got to learn English quick. But after he learned English, his English was perfect, but I still spoke Chinese to him, and he spoke Chinese to me, so we were like comfortable in each other's skin, so to speak. So I feel good that I was his friend afterwards, even though I think a lot of people still messed with him. But I wanted to make this video. I just also feel bad about my behavior now. You know, you're little, you don't understand the consequences, but I partly did understand the consequences, right? Noticing the blood and then realizing I gotta stop messing with this kid, and then later becoming his friend. Something happened in my brain, but for years, you don't remember that side of you. You don't remember all of that. And it's good to remember these things. It's good to remember that when you were young, you had empathy, you had morals. I think it helps you become a nicer, better person. And that's why I wanted to apologize in this video. I really want to apologize to Yi Jung. I don't know where Yi Jung is now. He probably, like me, got an English name, so he's not named Yi Jung anymore. And I just hope, Yi Jung, if you ever see this, I don't think you would recognize me. I look very different now than I did when I was a little kid. I was much puffier and cuter. But if you do recognize me, I'm sorry. Sometimes as kids, you don't understand the consequences. At least I give myself credit that I think after half a year I did understand, but I still messed with them like pretty bad. I mean, I was the only kid who jumped him twice. All the other kids might have made fun of him, done that, but I took it to the next level because before I saw him bleeding, I didn't realize that, you know, this kid has a story. You don't know what's going on to make him so weird, look like such a person of prey. Maybe his dad beats his mom. Maybe his mom beats his dad at home. Who knows? Maybe something, right? Maybe something's going on with his family, that's his environment. Maybe his parents are having trouble adapting to American culture, even though I think Chicago Midwesterners are awesome, but maybe they had some trouble adapting to American culture. Who knows? Maybe his parents were evil. Maybe his parents were like really bad people, and so like that's why he looked like, maybe he was a nice guy, which I do think he was a nice guy, so he couldn't live with such psychopathic parents. You never know. But the point is, again, life's short. We're adults now. I'm not saying spend your time with people who, you know, you can't stand, or people who can't help themselves, or people who bring you down. But all I'm saying is, understand that with the exception of a few, certain people are just born psychopaths. They have no morality, or certain people are just so lost they can't help themselves. But everyone else, if they're a little maladapted, if they're a little maladjusted, if they tick you off, it could be just their environment. They didn't grow up in the best environments. Maybe something happened to them, whether it was in childhood, whether it was in middle school, high school, college, after college, that disrupted certain brain patterns in their brain. And give them slightly more chance. I know some of you are like that already, but I'm not like that, right? Certain people that piss me off, screw them. So that's all I have to say. And I do give credit. I mean, I got friends like this who are very Christian. They try to embody what Jesus stood for, and they're very much like this. And sometimes I feel like they're too nice, but I want to reflect on it from a different angle, and that's what this video is about. So, hope you guys like this talk. It's a longer talk, but we went through a lot. We went through psychology, we went through childhood, we went through morality. You know, again, learning from your past, I'm big on that. Learning from the good brain patterns in your childhood and stuff like that. So I think we talked about a lot. We learned a lot in this talk. And take what you can from this, man. If it helps raise your empathy levels or something, I'm glad. If maybe you feel like you need to apologize to someone, do it. And that's all. Thank you guys so much. Jerry is out. I was trying to make a funny saying. I don't know what that happened. But anyways, if you guys want to subscribe to my other channel, I teach Chinese. That's what I was like in that mentality. I was saying, oh yeah, Jerry teaches Chinese out, but this is not on Jerry Teaches Chinese. Anyways, guys, talk to you soon. More reflections like this to come. Bye-bye.